There's a truth about twin flames that goes against everything you've heard about spiritual relationships. A truth that patriarchal society itself has worked to hide for millennia, but which Carl Jung discovered through his deepest studies on the anima and animus, on the feminine and masculine psyche, and on how two souls recognize and consciously unite. In the twin flame journey, it's always the feminine that defines whether union will happen or not. And when I say feminine, I'm not necessarily talking about the physical woman, but the feminine principle that exists in every twin soul connection, regardless of the gender of the bodies these souls inhabit. Jung realized something that ancient mystics already knew, but which has been systematically erased from our collective understanding. The feminine is the original creative principle, the one who chooses, decides, allows, or denies manifestation. The masculine, as much as it may seem to be the active pole on the surface, is actually the reactive pole, the one that responds, reflects, adapts to the energetic field created by the feminine. This is a cosmic law as fundamental as gravity. The feminine creates the magnetic field of attraction, and the masculine aligns to that field. It's always been this way. It will always be this way. But here's the problem. Most people, especially those carrying more feminine energy, don't know this. They've been conditioned to believe they must wait, chase, convince, prove their love, beg for recognition. They've been taught that true love requires effort, sacrifice, and that they must fight to win over the one they love. And it's exactly this inversion of energetic roles that prevents millions of twin flames from consciously uniting. It's this distortion that creates the hellish cycle of runner and chaser that so many live, where one soul runs after while the other pulls away indefinitely. If you're watching this video, it's no coincidence. Your soul knows you need to hear this information because maybe you're exactly one of those souls trying to force a union using masculine energy when you should be using feminine energy. Today, I'll reveal why the feminine must move first in the final stage of the twin flame journey, how Jung discovered this truth through his studies on individuation, and most importantly, I'll teach you how to identify if you're operating in the correct energy or if you're unconsciously sabotaging your own union by using the wrong polarity. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover the best-kept secret about twin flames. Because maybe you don't need to do anything else besides stop doing everything. But first, you need to understand why Jung reached this conclusion, and why it goes against everything society has taught us about love and relationships. Carl Jung dedicated decades of his life studying what he called the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine principles that exist within every human being, regardless of their physical gender. And through these studies, he discovered something that completely changed his understanding of how two people connect at deep soul levels. In any true relational dynamic, there's always a more feminine pole and a more masculine pole, and these poles have specific energetic functions that cannot be reversed without creating chaos and imbalance. The feminine principle, according to Jung, is receptive, but not passive. It's choosing, but not pursuing. It's magnetic, but not aggressive. It's like the earth that chooses which seeds it will allow to germinate in its soil. The earth doesn't chase after seeds begging to be fertilized. It simply offers or denies its conditions for life to sprout. And when it offers its ideal conditions, the seeds naturally turn toward it, surrender to it, find in it the perfect home to flourish. The masculine principle, on the other hand, is directed, focused, penetrating. It's like the sun that offers its light constantly, without pursuing, without begging to be accepted. It simply shines with its authentic truth and allows the earth to choose whether it wants to receive that light or not. And when the earth opens to receive, when it offers fertile soil, the sun naturally pours over it with all its intensity. Jung observed that when these principles operate in harmony, when each is in its natural energetic role, attraction happens organically, effortlessly, without resistance. But when roles are reversed, when the feminine tries to be the pursuing sun, and the masculine tries to be the resisting earth, the dynamic becomes forced, unbalanced, usually doomed to failure or codependency. And here's where most people get lost. They confuse energetic polarity with physical gender. They think being feminine means being submissive, that being masculine means being dominating. But Jung discovered this has nothing to do with submission or domination. It has to do with energetic function. The feminine is the principle that chooses, that defines the magnetic field of what's possible or not. The masculine is the principle that responds to that choice, that adapts and molds itself to that magnetic field. In twin flame dynamics, Regardless of who's in the male or female body, there's always one soul that carries more feminine energy and another that carries more masculine energy in that specific connection. And Jung realized that when these two aspects recognize each other mutually, when two halves of the same soul meet through two different people, union can only happen consciously when each assumes their natural energetic polarity. The problem is that modern society, especially through misunderstood feminism and distorted patriarchal culture, has taught exactly the opposite. It taught that women should chase men, that they should be active, aggressive, that they should conquer. And it taught men to be more passive, more receptive, less directed. This polarity inversion has created entire generations of people who no longer know how to relate in an energetically balanced way. And when it comes to twin flames, this polarity confusion becomes even more destructive. Because twin flames are connections that operate at much higher and more subtle frequencies than common relationships. Any energetic imbalance in this dynamic creates resistances that can last years, decades, sometimes entire lifetimes. Jung observed in his therapy sessions that couples who managed to maintain deep and lasting relationships were always those where each person honored their natural energetic polarity, and those who lived in cycles of conflict, separation, and reunion were invariably those where polarities were reversed or confused. But when it comes specifically to twin flames, Jung discovered something even more specific. The soul that carries more feminine energy in the dynamic is always the one that defines whether union will happen or not. It doesn't matter if that soul is in a male or female body. It doesn't matter if it appears weaker or stronger socially. Energetically, it's the one with final choice power. And here's the part that may sound controversial, but which Jung documented extensively. When the feminine pursues, when it tries to convince, when it abandons its own completeness to run after the masculine, he automatically pulls back. Not out of cruelty, not out of lack of love, but because energetically he feels the magnetic field is reversed. He unconsciously senses that something is out of the natural order of things. On the other hand, when the feminine establishes itself in its own sovereignty, when it chooses itself as the primary source of love and completeness, when it stops pursuing and starts radiating its own authentic light, the masculine instantly feels this change, and he's naturally attracted, like a bee is attracted to nectar, like a river is attracted to the ocean. This isn't a manipulation strategy. It's not a psychological game. It's an energetic law, as natural as breathing. And when you understand this law and begin to operate it consciously, everything changes. The entire dynamic of your twin flame connection transforms because you're finally navigating with the natural energetic current instead of fighting against it. But to understand how to apply this understanding in practice, you first need to identify which polarity you carry in your specific twin flame dynamic. And this isn't always obvious, because it may not correspond to your physical gender or superficial personality traits. Jung developed a way to identify each person's energetic polarity in a relational dynamic by observing not what they did, but how they felt and reacted energetically in relation to each other. And he discovered there are very clear signs that reveal which soul carries more feminine energy and which carries more masculine energy in a specific connection. If you're the feminine pole of the dynamic, you probably feel an attraction that's both magnetic and selective. You don't feel attracted to just anyone, but when you connect with your twin flame, the attraction is total, enveloping, as if every cell in your body recognizes that energy. You may also feel an intense need to merge, to dissolve boundaries, to become one person with them. And when that person pulls away or creates distance, you feel as if a part of you is being torn away. If you're the feminine pole, you may also have the tendency to idealize your twin flame, to see them as perfect, as the answer to all your deepest longings. You may feel incomplete without them, as if you need their presence to feel whole. And paradoxically, you may have intense impulses to take care of them, to heal them, to save them from their own problems or limitations. But here's what's crucial to understand. These feelings and impulses aren't signs that you should act on them. Actually, they're signs that you need to do exactly the opposite. They're indications that you're confusing your natural energetic function with behaviors conditioned by society. The true feminine doesn't pursue, doesn't try to save, doesn't abandon itself to conquer the other. The true feminine establishes itself in its own completeness, and from that place of integrity, allows or denies the masculine's approach. Like a rose that doesn't chase after bees, but simply blooms in its authentic beauty, and allows them to come to it naturally. On the other hand, if you're the masculine pole of the dynamic, you may feel an attraction that's more focused, more directed, like a laser beam aimed at that specific person. You may feel a certainty that they're the one, even when they're being inconsistent or confusing toward you. You may also feel impulses to protect them, to be strong for them, to create stability so they can flourish. If you're the masculine pole, you probably have more ease maintaining your individuality, even when deeply connected. You can love intensely, but don't lose your sense of self in the process. And when the feminine pulls away or creates drama, you may feel confused, but not destroyed. You can maintain a relatively stable emotional base even in relational turbulence. Jung observed that the true masculine is naturally responsive to the feminine's energetic state. When she's established in her sovereignty, when she's radiant in her own truth, he naturally feels attracted and compelled to approach, to offer, to court. But when she's pursuing, needy, trying to convince him, he instinctively pulls back, not from lack of love, but because he senses something is energetically reversed. This masculine responsiveness isn't a flaw or form of cruelty. It's his natural energetic function. Just as a compass always points to magnetic north, the masculine always orients toward the feminine who's radiating her own authentic light. But when the feminine is chasing after him, it's as if magnetic north keeps moving constantly, making it impossible for the compass to find stable direction. And here we arrive at the central point of everything. Why the feminine must move first in the final stage of the twin flame journey. Because moving first doesn't mean pursuing or conquering. It means exactly the opposite. It means stopping moving in the other's direction and starting to move in your own direction. Jung realized that the final stage of the twin flame journey always begins when the feminine makes a fundamental internal choice, to choose herself as the primary source of love, completeness, and fulfillment, not as a strategy to win the masculine, but as a genuine act of self-love and personal sovereignty. When the feminine stops emotionally abandoning herself, hoping to win the masculine, when she stops molding herself to be what she thinks he wants, when she stops sacrificing her own truth to maintain the connection, something extraordinary happens in the energetic field between them. The feminine begins to radiate a completely different frequency, a frequency of conscious choice instead of desperate need, a frequency of internal abundance instead of emotional lack. And the masculine, who's naturally responsive to the energetic field created by the feminine, immediately feels this change. It's as if she turned on a light that didn't exist before. It's as if she became magnetic in a way that wasn't possible before when she was chasing after him. Jung documented this phenomenon in dozens of clinical cases where patients who were in obsessive dynamics with their supposed twin flames managed to completely transform these dynamics simply by changing their relationship with themselves. Not changing their relationship with the other person, but changing their relationship with themselves. One of Jung's patients, whom he mentions indirectly in his writings on anima and individuation, spent 2 years pursuing a man she believed was her twin flame. She did everything to win him, changed her plans to be available when he wanted, suppressed her own opinions to not contradict him, sacrificed her friendships and personal interests to dedicate herself entirely to the connection with him. And the more she did this, the more he pulled away, the more evasive and inconsistent he became. Jung worked with this woman for months, helping her understand that her obsession with external union was preventing her internal individuation. And when she finally managed to establish herself in her own sovereignty, when she finally chose to prioritize her own growth and fulfillment instead of waiting for him, something remarkable happened. Within weeks, he began seeking her out, showing genuine interest, behaving consistently and committed. But here's the most important part of the story. When he finally approached with serious intentions, she discovered she no longer needed him in the same desperate way. She still felt love and attraction, but now she could consciously choose whether she wanted to be with him or not. Instead of feeling, she needed him to feel complete. This is the central paradox of the twin flame journey. You can only consciously attract what you don't desperately need. You can only magnetize what you can freely choose to receive or reject. When you need something or someone to feel complete, you emit a frequency of lack that naturally repels what you most desire. But when you become complete by yourself, when you establish yourself in your own emotional and spiritual sovereignty, you emit a frequency of abundance that naturally attracts experiences and people aligned with that elevated frequency. Jung called this the individuation process. becoming a complete and integrated individual who doesn't depend on external factors to feel whole. And he discovered that individuation is always a prerequisite for conscious and healthy relationships, especially soul relationships like twin flame connections. When the feminine individuates, when she stops defining herself through the masculine's response and starts defining herself through her own internal truth, she automatically becomes more attractive. Not because she's using seduction strategies, but because she's radiating authentic integrity. And authentic integrity is magnetic in a way that emotional need can never be. The masculine, who previously pulled back from the energy of need and pursuit, now feels naturally attracted to the energy of choice and sovereignty. He feels he can approach without being sucked into a vortex of emotional dependency. He feels he can offer his love without it being interpreted as an obligation to fill emotional voids that aren't his responsibility. But there's a very important nuance in this process that most people don't understand. When the feminine chooses herself first, it doesn't mean she becomes selfish or indifferent to the masculine. It means she becomes capable of loving maturely instead of loving codependently. Mature love is that which comes from abundance, not lack. It's that which offers gifts instead of demanding debts. It's that which celebrates the other's individuality instead of trying to mold them to fill personal needs. And this type of love is only possible when you already love yourself enough not to need others to fill voids that are your responsibility to fill. Jung observed that when two people relate from individuation, when each is complete in themselves and consciously chooses to share their completeness with the other, they create what he called the union of opposites. Not a fusion where identities dissolve, but a synthesis where two integrities harmoniously complement each other. And this is exactly the final goal of the twin flame journey. Not finding someone to complete you, but finding someone who's already complete like you and consciously choosing to create something greater together. Like two talented artists who join to create a masterpiece that neither could create alone, but which is only possible because each already masters their individual art. But to reach that point, the feminine must make the initial movement of choosing herself. And this movement isn't physical or external. It's internal and energetic. It's a shift in attention focus, self-love, existential priorities. In practical terms, this means if you've identified that you carry feminine energy in your twin flame dynamic, you need to stop doing everything you're doing to try to win or maintain the masculine's attention. You need to stop modifying your behaviors hoping to provoke a specific response from him. You need to stop analyzing every word, every gesture, every silence from him looking for signs of interest or disinterest. Instead, you need to turn all that energy you were directing toward him back toward yourself. You need to start asking yourself not, what does he want from me, but what do I want for my life? Not, how can I win him, but how can I become the most authentic and fulfilled person I can be? This can include returning to hobbies and interests you abandoned to dedicate yourself to the connection with him. It can include reconnecting with friends you neglected. It can include seeking professional or creative achievements you postponed. It can include working on emotional or spiritual issues you've been avoiding. The point isn't to fake indifference or try to provoke jealousy. The point is to genuinely reconnect with your own life, your own dreams, your own essence. It's remembering who you were before meeting him and expanding that identity in ways that leave you genuinely satisfied and fulfilled. Jung observed that when a person makes this genuine movement back to themselves, when they stop orbiting around another person and return to being the center of their own life, something automatic happens in the energetic field. They stop emitting need frequencies and start emitting choice frequencies. They stop radiating lack and start radiating abundance. And the masculine, especially if he's truly your twin flame, will feel this change almost immediately. He may not rationally understand what changed, but he'll perceive that something fundamental has transformed in her energy. She'll seem more attractive, more interesting, more desirable. Not because she's trying to seem that way, but because she is that way. When you're established in your own sovereignty, when you're genuinely satisfied with your own life, you naturally become more charismatic, more magnetic, more interesting. You have more stories to tell, more energy to share, more presence to offer. You become someone others want to be with, not because they need you, but because they like how they feel when they're in your presence. And if that person is really your twin flame, if there's a genuine soul connection between you, he won't be able to resist this new energy you're radiating. He'll feel attracted in a way he may never have felt before. Because now he's not being pursued or pressured. He's being invited to participate in something beautiful and abundant. But here's the most important part. When he approaches, and he probably will approach, you must maintain your sovereignty. You can't immediately return to the old patterns of abandoning yourself to be with him. You must continue prioritizing your own completeness and consciously choose how much of yourself you want to share with him. Jung said individuation isn't a one-time event, but a continuous process. And in the context of twin flames, this means that even after union happens, the feminine must continue maintaining her individual sovereignty. She must continue being a complete person, who consciously chooses to share her life with another complete person. Many women do the initial work of individuating, attract back their twin flames, but then make the mistake of returning to old codependency patterns once the relationship establishes. And when that happens, the unbalanced dynamic returns, and frequently the masculine pulls away again. The feminine's sovereignty isn't a temporary strategy to win the masculine. It's a way of life, an existential posture that must be maintained throughout the connection's journey. It's the foundation on which a conscious union can build and sustain over time. And when the feminine manages to maintain this sovereignty consistently, when she manages to love without losing herself, connect without abandoning herself, surrender without annulling herself, she creates ideal energetic conditions for the masculine to also establish himself in his own integrity. Because the masculine can only express his true essence when he doesn't feel pressured to fill emotional lacks or save someone from their own existential voids. When both are established in their respective sovereignties, when both are complete people who consciously choose to build something together, they have the possibility of living what Jung considered the highest possible relationship between human beings. A conscious partnership between two individuated souls who recognize each other as complementary aspects of the same cosmic essence. This is the true twin flame union. Not a fusion where identities dissolve, but a synthesis where two completenesses harmonize to create something greater than the sum of their parts. Like two tuned musical instruments that create a symphony impossible to play by just one, but which is only possible because each perfectly masters its own melody. Jung spent decades studying these dynamics and reached a conclusion few dare to accept. True love isn't about mutual need, but about mutual choice. It's not about two halves completing each other, but about two integrities celebrating each other. It's not about finding someone to fill your voids, but about finding someone who has also already filled their own voids and wants to create shared abundance. And to reach this place of conscious love and authentic choice, the feminine must take the first step. She must choose herself as the primary source of completeness and happiness. She must establish her own emotional and spiritual sovereignty. She must become magnetic through authenticity, not through pursuit. When this happens, when the feminine truly moves first in her own direction, the masculine naturally moves in his direction. Not out of obligation, not out of manipulation, but out of authentic attraction. He feels called to participate in something beautiful and abundant, instead of feeling pressured to save someone from their own existential lack. And this is the difference between forced union and conscious union. Forced union happens when at least one party is trying to fill internal voids through the other person. Conscious union happens when both parties have already filled their own voids and consciously choose to create shared abundance. If you recognized in this video that you've been operating in the wrong energy, if you perceived that you've been pursuing when you should be pursued, if you understood that you've been abandoning yourself when you should be choosing yourself, then you have in your hands one of the most valuable pieces of information that exists about twin flames. You have the knowledge necessary to completely transform your connection's dynamic. But remember, this transformation must be authentic. You can't fake sovereignty hoping to manipulate a specific response from the masculine. You must truly become sovereign. You must genuinely choose yourself. You must really establish yourself in your own completeness. Jung knew this is one of the most challenging works a human being can do. Stop seeking external validation and start validating yourself. Stop trying to complete yourself through others and start completing yourself through yourself. Stop loving from lack and start loving from abundance. But when you manage to do this work, when you manage to truly establish yourself in your own sovereignty, you don't just transform your connection with your supposed twin flame. You transform all your relationships. You become a naturally magnetic person, not just for one specific person, but for all experiences and people that resonate with your elevated frequency. And if that person is really your twin flame, they won't be able to resist this new version of you. They'll feel attracted in an irresistible way. Because finally you'll be radiating your true essence instead of radiating need disguised as love. But even if they don't approach, even if union doesn't materialize the way you hoped, you'll have gained something much more valuable. You'll have found yourself. You'll have discovered your own completeness. You'll have learned to love yourself genuinely and unconditionally. And a person who genuinely loves themselves is capable of loving others maturely and consciously. A person who's complete in themselves is capable of relationships based on choice, not need. A person who's established themselves in their own sovereignty is capable of creating connections based on abundance, not lack. Jung would say this is the greatest achievement a human being can reach, becoming a complete and integrated individual, capable of loving without losing oneself, of connecting without abandoning oneself, of surrendering without annulling oneself. And when you reach this state of individuation, you naturally attract experiences and people operating at the same level of consciousness and maturity. If you've made it this far and felt I was speaking directly to your soul about this dynamic you may have been living for months or even years, then I need to tell you about something that can dramatically accelerate this transformation you need to make. I've created 2 exclusive materials based on Carl Jung's deepest teachings on individuation and conscious relationships. The first is 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung, a practical guide that will take you through the most powerful techniques Jung developed for individuation and self-knowledge. For 21 days, you'll work with specific exercises to integrate your shadow, dialogue with your unconscious, and most importantly, establish yourself in your own emotional and spiritual sovereignty. It's like having Jung as your personal therapist, guiding you step by step through the process of truly becoming who you are. The second is the Soul Survival Manual. Because I know when you're going through the intensity of a twin flame connection, some days are simply hard to get through. This manual contains practical strategies, based on depth psychology, for navigating the journey's most challenging moments. These are tools you can use when the temptation to return to old pursuit patterns is very strong, when the need to control the situation seems unbearable, when you question whether you can really do this individuation work. The links are in the first pinned comment of this video. And now I want to know who really stayed until the end of this journey with me. Write in the comments, "I choose myself first," because that shows me you're not just another viewer, but someone truly committed to their transformation. Remember, only 5% of people in twin flame journeys manage to make this energetic polarity inversion. Not because it's impossible, but because it requires courage to go against everything society has taught us about love and relationships. You've made it this far because your soul knows you're capable of this transformation. Thank you for having the courage to question patterns, to seek truth even when it goes against your previous beliefs, and most importantly, for being willing to do the internal work necessary to live conscious and mature connections. See you in the next video.